How's it going, ScrubGamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Well, a little bit different in terms of card game, but similar to what we've done before, and that is a how to play Star Wars Unlimited guide. Because it's a new game that I've basically picked up and had a try with, had a little few test games with my locals with, and watched some gameplay of some of it as well, whether people were proxies, and just come to really like it, really enjoy it. It's a really nice, fun game. Similar aspects to some games I've played before, and just overall, a great um, franchise, and also a great gameplay. And that's what I mainly look for into a game. Is just like the franchise to kind of pull me in and get interested because I'm a fan of it, and then the gameplay keeping me in and playing it. So, before we get into the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Helps me out. Helps out the channel greatly. You can like it to let me know that you like this kind of content. Comment down below if there's any questions you have that isn't explained in the video, so I can help out and answer them as best I can. And also subscribe. It helps me with my videos, helps me with my channel, helps me get to my goal of 1,000 subs, which is still on the way there. And also by clicking the notification bell, you can get alerts when my videos do drop, so you know when they're available to watch, either right then, there, and now, or later on when you've got time. But with that over and done with, let's get into how to play Star Wars Limited. So, Star Wars Limited is a new trading card game, which each player takes on the role of a leader, and it's normally an iconic Star Wars character. Like if you've played, I've seen Star Wars, you've got characters like Luke, Darth Vader, things like that. And as we get further on, more sets and stuff like that, we get more characters, so you can play probably one of your favorite ones when they become a leader card, and you use them to rally your forces to do battle and defeat the opponent's base. And these forces are represented by a 50-card deck containing units, events, and upgrades. So different kind of terminology in terms of like cards, but yeah, units, events, and updates. You got units which are like creatures, events that are like spells and extras, and your upgrades which are like equips and stuff like that. And the game is played over a series of rounds. So it's a little bit different to how some cards played, because you've got like an action phase and a regroup phase, which is kind of like charge and untapping, and then the action phase, which is like a main phase. And during the action phase of each round, you'll play cards from your hand and use these cards to attack your opponent's base in units. And then in the regroup phase, you'll draw cards, build your resources, and ready your units for the next round of battle. And early in the game, your leader will affect the passively, but eventually join the fray as a powerful unit. So that's one thing I do like about this game, is it does incorporate the leader, like kind of leader idea. Do we have games like in Dragon Ball and One Piece stuff like that, where you have a leader that you is your main it's like a big unit that you have to help. And in this game, it also, like in those games, you can also use attack with it. It's like an extra unit. And this game still has that kind of thing where it's got an effect that you can bring into the battle to join and help out, like as sending it like a sergeant joining, like a general joining in the battle. And then if it's gone, it's still there available to still be used even as if it leaves. So it's really interesting, and it plays a little bit differently. It still have those phases, but it plays differently. Instead of like turn-based, where you have your turn, your opponent has their turn, and vice versa. You go back and forth until one of you wins. You share a action phase, which is quite interesting. You share the action phase, and you play action after action. So instead of like going turn by turn, so your turn, their turn, it's your action, their action until turn's over. Then you go to the next turn. So you go basically respond, like your opponent does an action, you do an action, and you go back and forth until you both pass. You go to the next one. I find it really interesting. And so we'll start off with the how to win the game. So winning the game, each base starts the game with hit points, so HP. So as you can see on both the cards in the top, in the top left hand, you've got the hit points, and if you do enough damage to an enemy base to reduce to 0, you win the game. So you do have so far from the first set with the starters, you do have like different powers. Like you see, we got here Security Complex. This base has 25 hit points, whereas Catacombs of there it has 30 hit points. So you got either 25 hit points with an epic action, which is like a once per game action you can take on the card, and you got some bases which are like no action but a little more 5 more hit points. So that's kind of like differences in base. That's the ones we've got so far, just like just 25 with an effect and 30 without, that you can start off with. And as we get more sets and more stuff, it might change up a little bit. Currently, there's kind of 2 different bases you can get in the game so far. But yeah, the way to win is reduce your opponent's base from its whatever is printed hit points it has down to 0 by doing damage to it. So, and here's a little bit of setup to it. So there's a way to set up the game. We got this handy dandy little kind of showcase. So each player will take their deck, and yeah, basically grab the deck, separate the double-sided leader, base, and token cards from the other 50 cards, which is your deck. You'll basically set them up, place them each against each other, so set up against your opponent, and then follow these little steps to set up the game. So first one is you'll place your base, and you put your base into play facing your opponent. So as you see, the first thing is you got a base in play facing your opponent, because that is where essentially your life and what your opponent attacks into to kind of like try and win. Then after that, the next one is you put your leader into play below your base, horizontal with its non-unit side facing up. So your basically it's the horizontal side of your leader facing up underneath your base, so that's your leader. And then next thing you do is randomly determine which player starts the game with the initiative, and give the initiative counter to that player. You set aside all other counters and token cards out of play after that. And initiative is essentially priority. The best way to explain it is like priority. So you get the first action. So because when both players, as I said, in the turn, you both you both have to share the same turn, but you take action. So you'll take an action, your opponent then will take an action after that. You'll go back after your action until both players pass, both players pass. And the initiative is there to basically determine who takes the first action. So their priority, so the one who takes the first action of the turn, and then it starts off from them back and forth like that. So unlike with other games where you roll the dice, where you basically randomly determine who goes first, you randomly determine who gets the initiative, so who gets to take the first action of each turn. Then once you've done that and you determine who has the initiative, you then shuffle your deck and draw your hand. So you draw a hand of 6 cards from the top of your deck to your hand. And then what I love with these kind of games like Star Wars, like this game, like Dragon Ball Masters, Fusion World, and One Piece, is that you can mulligan. And if you don't know what mulligan is, you take a mulligan by shuffling your entire hand into your deck, then draw a brand new card, or a brand new hand of 6 cards. So that's what mulligan is. Where if you don't like your hand, say you've got cards in your hand that you've got no play for the first few turns, like you've all got like expensive cards in your hand, nothing cheap to play, then you can mulligan by just basically putting your whole hand back into your deck, shuffle up, and then draw a brand new hand. And like I said, it's recommended the mulligan if you don't have any cheap things to play for the first 2 turns, because you don't want to skip the first few turns, not be able to play anything. You want to be able to play the game properly. So that's one nice, and it's similar to the ones we've had in Fusion World and One Piece, where you mulligan the entire hand, not like Masters where you shuffle back the selected cards. It's a full mulligan or nothing. So then once you've mulliganed and you've got your hand you've got your hand, and you can only do a mulligan once as well. So let's just remember, just one mulligan. And once you've got your hand and you're ready to play, you then choose 2 cards from your hand and put them down into play face down near your base, and those are your resources, like essentially thinking of them as energy or don. They're your resources to be able to play cards. So they're like cards you basically tap to be able to play out cards, pay the cost and stuff for cards. So that's how you do it. And it's nice that you put them face down, so your opponent doesn't get to see. You can still see what they are. Your opponent doesn't get to see, so you don't have to like charge stuff. So a nice thing about that being face down is if you have to charge something, say charge a big thing that you normally play later, your opponent can't see that you've charged a big bomb threat early and not know what's available. So it's harder to then gauge what's still available, what you might have charged, what you might have lost, no longer have access to. And then once that's all done and set up, you then get to ready up and start the game with the first action. So the action phase is basically the main phase what you take up. So most of the gameplay happens during the action phase. During this phase, players go back and forth taking one action at a time. The player with the initiative counter takes the first action, so they got the priority, they do the first thing, and then their opponent takes an action, and so on, until both players are passed. And like you can see on screen, the different actions you can take that are available to each player is you can either play a card, so play a card from your hand. You can either attack, or you can attack with a unit. You can use an action ability. You can take the initiative, which is a good play, which essentially what the initiative is is like a pass, but you basically guarantee for the next turn you have the priority, so you take the first action. But then if you do that, you essentially pass for the turn. So you can pass in the turn, which is ever one you can do. It's just passing your action for the turn. So then your opponent has a chance to do an action, then it comes back to you. But if you take the initiative, that's like passing, but you pass all ever actions for that turn. So be careful. And taking the initiative allows you to make sure for the next turn you take the first action, but it means you get no more actions for the rest of the current turn. So to get a look at what kind of units you can do, you have units like this. So this is what a unit looks like. So as in the top part, it has the well, we'll get into this actually a bit, but this is what the units do, what the units look like, and these are what you can attack with. So you've got like a power, defense, and a cost and stuff like that. So getting more into like the different types of cards. So there are 3 types of cards you can play. You have units, like the one on the left here, surgical 2-1B, surgical droid. You got then events, which, as I said, are like the spells, like extras and stuff like that, which are events that you can play. And you got upgrades, which are like equip cards that you can give to units and give them specific skills and power-ups as well. Each card has different rules when played, and they'll be described in the following pages. Following pages of this video as we get into it. So next one we have, next thing to go over is essentially the terminology. So in some games you have tapping, like I've said before, you've got tapping and untapping, you got rest mode and active mode and everything like that. But in this game, the way to determine like what they're called is readying, which is like untapped, and exhausted, which is tapped. So things are referred to ready and exhausting cards, which are basically untapping and tapping cards. And units and resources enter play exhausted, turn sideways, then become ready, turn upright at the end of the regroup phase each round. Many cards must exhaust in order to be used, and resources exhaust to pay for the cards you play from your hand. Units exhaust to attack or use certain abilities, indicated by like the little tap icon as shown on Admiral Roselle. And an exhausted card can't exhaust again until it's ready, so it needs to be essentially readied, untapped, to be tapped again. You also get some leaders like we'll see in a bit, well, hopefully we'll see in a bit, exhaust to use their action ability. When you deploy your leader as a unit, you ready it even if it was exhausted before, and then this means it can attack the same round as it's deployed. This is one unique thing that leaders have, is that they come in active, they come in readied, so you can attack with them the same turn with any like unit, unless it's got a specific skill that says it comes in readied, it comes in rested. And here's some examples of that. So you've got things like Cassian Andor here, which is actually just to pay 1 resource and then tap itself to use the effect as like the cost. But you've got things like Boba Fett, where you've got the option to exhaust him, to tap him, to fulfill his skill. And then we've got, so covering the 3 types of cards, we've got the first one being units. So these, as I said, are like the creatures, battle cards, things like that, your characters, and units enter play exhausted, remain play until defeated. So until they've lost all their hit points, they stay around. And units have a power and a hit point value. So the power indicates how much damage a unit deals in combat, and if a unit ever has damage on it that is greater or equal to its hit points, it's defeated, basically KO'd, and put into its owner's discard pile, so like the drop or graveyard. Many units also have abilities in their like text box that are active until that unit is in play, and basically we'll get into that when we come to the different card abilities. But as you can see, with these cards, you've got different things. So in the top left, you've got the cost there. You've also got aspect icons, which we'll get to later in the video. You've got the up next to where it says what type of cards it is, like in the top there, you've got the unit there. And the next to it, you've got a never part that says ground or space. 2 different arenas, which we'll get to in a little bit as well. You also have the name of the card, and one thing to note is, which I think might also be covered in later in the video as well, is you got a little star there, which if it's got a little star, that means it's a unique unit, meaning you can only have 1 in play at a given time. If it doesn't have this, then it means it is a non-unique unit that you can have multiple of the same card in at a given time. There, shown in the bottom, we've got the traits there, like a little text box just under the picture. We've got the traits given what this card is. So this one is an Imperial and an Official card. And then on the left, we've got the power indicated in red, which is how much damage this card deals in combat. And you got on the left in the blue one, you've got the left and the right. You got the blue one, which is your hit points, so how much life the card has. Then in the text box underneath, you have the abilities. So any skills this card has, which this one has a one plate effect, and that is a unit card. So getting in, as we were explaining before, as in the top it says ground and space. Well, for this game, it's a little bit unique and quite nice in that fact, in that combat is divided into two separate arenas. So you got the ground arena and space arena. So each unit is either a ground or space unit, as indicated in the top of the card. All ground units are played into the ground area on one side of the player's base, and all space units are placed in the space area or arena on the other side. In combat, ground units can't attack space units and vice versa, so ground has to attack ground and space has to attack space. You can't have ground attacking space and space attacking ground. It's just same unit, same kind of unit, same kind of arena has to attack the same kind of arena, which is quite nice. So it means that you can't just fill up one unit area being the ground and go like that. If your opponent plays in a space unit, you have to then play something in space to deal with it, or to like take it out or worry about. So you've got two arenas to worry about. So you can't. It's not a game of focusing on just one area. You can focus on one area instead of more, but you have to be careful about different arenas. Sorry, I keep calling areas, but they're technically called arenas. So with that clarified, we're now going to the next type of card, being events. So events have an ability in their text box, and when you play an event, use its ability and put the event in your discard pile, because they're like as if you play like magic or they're like extra cards or spells. You don't actually play the card, you pay the cost for them, and then you trigger the effect that's in the text box, which in this case is Vanquish, which is defeat a non-leader unit, and then once it's used, it's put in your discard pile. So just like with a event, it's got the cost, it's got an event there. It doesn't have a thing to say which arena because it's not an event card that's played, it's a card that's activated and then discarded. Got name of the card, in this case Vanquish. It's got a trait as well, because some cards, like even just like with Fusion World, you got in Star Wars they got traits as well. You got aspect icons, which once again we'll get into in a little bit. We'll get into later in the video. You got the ability in the text box, and then you got the picture down below. Like some of the art in these cards are quite nice as well. So that's the event card. So then we'll go into the last type of card, being upgrades. So these are like your equips that give like a power boost or an effect to a card that I didn't normally have. So upgrades enter play attached to a unit and remain in play until that unit is defeated. So once a unit's KO'd that has an attachment, the attachment is also sent with it. Upgrades provide increased power, hit points, and or abilities to the attached unit. To attach an upgrade to a unit, slide the upgrade partially underneath that unit so the upgrade's power, hit points, and abilities are visible. And if the unit an upgrade is attached to leaves play, defeat that upgrade. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah. So if the unit's defeated, the upgrade is gone as well. So if you have, like, say, this Vader's lightsaber attached to a unit, and the unit is KO'd or like defeated and put in the drop, it's also put in this card is also put in the discarded drop as well. And like the other cards, you've got the cost, you've got the name of the card, aspect icons. Also, just like with events, it's just got upgrade. It doesn't have an arena because it's not really played. It's attached to a unit, because it can be attached in either side depending what it's allowed to go to. You've got the abilities in the little text box. Then at the bottom of the card, you've got the power bonus being plus what adds to it. So in this case, +3 for its damage, for its power. Then on the other side, you've got the bonus for hit points. So you've got the +1, giving it an extra 1 to its the card's hit points. And you've also got traits as well. So you've got the name at the top and the bottom as well. But you also got traits at the bottom being like item, weapon, and lightsaber. So that is it for the 3 types of cards. So now we'll explain about how you attack with units. So attacking with a unit. Attacking is the primary way you're going to be dealing damage to an opponent's base and to win the game. You can also attack enemy units as well. So it's not just attacking the base, you can attack your opponent's units as well to kind of remove them off board. A unit must be ready in order to attack. So if it's exhausted or tapped, it can attack. But if it's ready or untapped, you can attack with it. Only one unit can attack in a single action, and to attack you need to follow the following steps in order. So, first you exhaust the attacker and choose what to attack. So essentially declaring what you're attacking by switching it to from readied to exhaust, and then choosing what you're attacking into. You can attack an enemy unit in the same arena, ground or space. So if you're a ground unit, you can attack a card in the ground arena. If you're a space unit, you can attack a card in the space arena, and that is as the attacker. Or you may attack the opponent's base directly. So you can either attack a unit, no matter if it's exhausted or readied, and you can attack your opponent's base. So a little bit different to compare to some of the other games I've played. If you're watching this, you probably watch it from my channel, mainly being from Masters or like just Dragon Ball game, which normally is attacking into your exhausted opponent's exhausted cards. That's not their leader or their leader. But in this case, it's just any unit, as long as it's in the same arena as the card, or your opponent's base. Now, two little exceptions with this is if an enemy unit in the same arena as the attacker has Sentinel, as you can see from the green unit here, then it must be chosen as a defender unless the attacker has Saboteur, which you can see what that does in the red unit, the second one there. Any abilities that are active while the unit is attacking, including things like Raid, which you can see on the yellow card there, become active at this time. So if you, we'll go into these skills later, but essentially that's one up. So if your opponent's got a card with Sentinel, it's kind of like a Deadly Defender thing where it forces your opponent to attack it instead of your opponent's units in the same arena or your base. But if you have Saboteur, you can ignore Sentinel and defeat shields. And then when you declare what you're attacking with by resting it or exhausting it and choosing what you attack, that's also when your raid triggers, which raid is essentially giving your the card a power boost while attacking. The next part is if the attacker has Saboteur, then you defeat all shields on the defender, because like it says on Saboteur, it's defeat all opponent shields, meaning you just pop their shields on the defender. And for free, the next part is if the attacker has Restore, as you see from the last one, the blue one, you heal damage from your base equal to the restore's value. So an example shown on screen, Restore 1, when this unit attacks, you heal 1 damage from your base, which is quite nice. Then the next one is if the attacker has any on-attack abilities, you use them now. So as you can see from the yellow one, from the Outer Rim Headhunter, it's got on-attack, where if you control a leader unit, you may exhaust a non-leader unit. At this point, this is when that effect will trigger. And then after that, there's no comboing like you get in the Dragon Ball or One Piece, as we've seen. You just then next part is you deal damage, where if your unit is attacking, if you're attacking a base, it deals damage equal to its power to that base. So say with the if you attack with the blue card here, it does 2 power, so it do 2 damage to the base. But if you attack with the yellow one here, normally it would do 1 damage because it's got raid 1, meaning it gets one extra power while attacking. It do 2 damage to it. But then if you're attacking a unit, the attacker and defender simultaneously deal damage equal to the power to each other. If either unit has damage on it greater than or equal to its hit points, it's immediately defeated. So if the destroyed arc and echo base defender attack each other, they do 2 damage. They do damage to each other. So destroyed. Oh no, sorry. I'll actually go for the well, just if you get 2 units that attack each other, they do damage to each other. It's at the same time, and then if their damage on the card is greater than the hit points, they're basically just KO'd, gone, popped. And here's a little handy dandy guide to kind of show that. So in this example, you got the on the left side, you got the consular security force attacking the enemy base. So when it attacks the base, its power is free, so it deals 3 damage to the base and takes no damage in return because you're attacking the base. The base has no power; it doesn't do damage back. It's just there as your base to basically help you survive, and what you do damage to win the game. But then, if you see on the right side, if consider security force attacks a unit, so like for example the Death Star Stormtrooper, each unit deals 3 damage to each other. But then because the Death Star Trooper has 3 damage on it and only 1 hit point, it is defeated, whereas the consular security force remaining in play, with 3 damage on it, has 4 remaining hit points because it's got 7 hit points. So it takes 3 damage. It's got 4 damage. It's got 4 hit points remaining, so it survives. Whereas the other one's got more damage than its hit points, so it is KO'd or defeated. Next, we've got some action abilities. So we'll go into the action ability, explain what that is. So some cards have action abilities. These abilities often have a cost that must be paid in order to use them. So it's found in the brackets after the word action. This cost must include resources that must be paid, included by a little icon. So you can see from Cassian Andor, he's got a 1, meaning you have to pay 1 resource to be able to use it, and you exhaust the card indicated by the tap icon. So Cassian, he has to pay 1 resource and tap himself to be able to use it. If you can't pay the cost, you can't use the ability. Simple as that. You also have cards that have epic actions, like you see with these leaders. An epic action is an action ability that can only be used once per turn, once per game. And that's not once per game overall, it's once per game on each card. So if you have multiple cards with epic actions, each card can use the epic action once per game. So your leader can use it once per game on it. If your base has 1, it can use it once per game. Then we have taking the initiative and passing. So only one player can take this action each round for taking the initiative. That player takes control of the initiative counter even if they already have it, meaning that they will go first for the next round. But like I said before, after taking the initiative, you can't take any further actions for the rest of the action phase, and you are considered to pass for all the remaining actions in this phase. And then with passing, if you can or don't want to take another action for that turn, well, for that, if you don't want to take any other actions, you can pass. When you pass, you're considered to have done nothing during your action, and your opponent is immediately able to take their next action. You may still take more actions later in the action phase, you just skip that one action. But do be aware, because after a player passes, if their opponent passes or takes the initiative after their next action, the action phase immediately ends and play proceeds to the next regroup phase, basically charging and then going to the next turn. So do be careful if you do pass, because if your opponent also then after you passes, you then skip and then go on to the next game. Well, not next game, sorry, next term. Now, what we want to talk about is, like, as we said, there's different cards in here. You've got your leader card, that's another type of card in the game. And your leader is the centerpiece of your deck. It begins the game in its horizontal non-unit side, so like sideways, with an ability that's available from the start of the game. Your leader also has an epic action ability, and this is similar to, if you've played Dragon Ball, the Dragon Ball Supercard game, it's similar to Awakening. But it's not permanent, it's temporary. So the epic action is not available at the start of the game, but it gets unlocked if you have a certain number of resources in play. It's like with Dragon Ball, where if you go to a certain amount of life, you can awaken. It's the same thing when you get to a certain amount of resources, you can technically not awaken it, but deploy it. So once you have enough resources, you may use the action to deploy your leader. Flip the leader to its unit side, move it to the ground arena, and ready it. This action doesn't cost any resources and can be used regardless of whether your leader is already ready or exhausted. And while your leader is in play as a unit, it can attack, be attacked, and use abilities like any other unit. If your leader is defeated, you flip it back to its non-unit side, return it to your base, and exhaust it. Your leader's epic action can't be used again this game, but you can still use its other abilities. So when you do use it up, and when you do use his epic action, it gets defeated and put back. Make sure to cover it with an epic action counter to basically reminder, as like with anything, to determine that to basically signify that he has used his epic action already. Because remember, epic actions are used once per game. So essentially, it's like Awakening with this lead. So once you've get to certain ones, like if we see with Luke here, his epic action is if you control 6 or more resources, deploy him as a leader. So once you get the 6 or more resources in your resource area, you can flip it over to this side where it's now got power and hit points, and you can now attack with it. It can be attacked and use effects, in this case, which is on attack, giving every unit a shield token. And then when it's defeated, it's then returned back to its leader side with is not like a sideways facing side, and you just need to mark it to make sure you remember that it's used as epic action already. So that is the leader, and that is the leader card, and also brings us to the end of the action phase. So now we move on to the regroup phase. So this is essentially like your charge phase in this game, which is quite cool. And it is like the charge phase in Dragon Ball, but it is done a little bit differently, because remember with the Dragon Ball, the phase is draw, untap, charge. Where in this case, it's draw, charge, untap. So after the action phase, play proceeds to the regroup phase, and you and your opponent complete the following steps in action, in order, which is you draw cards. In this game, you draw 2 cards from your deck. So it's a little bit different. It's similar. It's a little bit. This is where it comes kind of has the same kind of thing as the Final Fantasy TCG, where you draw 2 cards from your deck in your draw phase instead of 1. So it's a nice little benefit in that you're technically drawing a card to play and a card to resource as well, which is quite cool. So after you've drawn your 2 cards, you can then resource a card. So you may choose a card from your hand to and put it in face down as a resource, or you may choose not to put a resource down and keep all cards in your hand. The player with the initiative chooses whether to put down a resource first, followed by the player that doesn't have the initiative. And one thing to recommend is players resource a card until at least you get enough resources to trigger your leader's epic action. Then once you've done that, you then ready your cards. So now untap the cards. So you ready all your exhausted cards in play, including units, resources, and your leader. And then when both players are ready all their cards, play then proceeds back to the action phase of the next round. So, yep. So regroups is essentially the charge phase. Once you've done all that, you then go ahead and go back to your action phase to basically play the game. So now we come to some other rules in the game. So now we come to the thing I said we're going to cover in a bit later on in the video, which was the aspect icons, which you remember seeing on the cards and leaders. So with the aspect icons, most cards have one or more icons showing the aspects to which that card belongs. Each aspect represents a different philosophy or motivation. These cards tell you what that card's aspects are, and maybe referring to maybe referenced by card abilities as well. Aspects are important when building your own custom deck, which we'll see in a little bit. We'll see later on in the video when it comes to deck building how these help out. But you have 6 different ones. You have the blue one, which being vigilance, green being command, red being aggression, yellow being cunning, white being heroism, and then black being villainy. So these are what the different aspect icons you have. We also have other cards as well, being token cards. So you have token cards that are set aside and not shuffled into your deck. Some cards may instruct you give a token to a unit. To do so, you take a set aside token of that type and attach to a unit in play. An experience token gives the attached unit +1 power and +1 hit point. And a shield token prevents any amount of damage from being dealt to the attached unit, then is defeated. If a token would leave play for any reason, is set aside. So you set aside to use, and when it's available, you need to use it. You bring it in, use it, and then when it's removed, you put it aside again. So you got the experience token for power boosts, and power and HP boost, and then you got the shield token to basically know when something's shielded. Next, we have some other things. First one is traits. So all cards have traits, such as like on this Battlefield Marine here, you have like Rebel or like Imperial. In this case, this is both a Rebel and a Trooper. You have things like Imperial, Rebel, Sith, Force, things like that. And these will appear in a small banner near the text box. Traits don't have their own rules, but some card abilities or some cards will reference cards with certain traits. You then have the friendly and enemy cards. You have cards you control are considered friendly cards, and cards your opponent controls are considered enemies. So you have your cards and your opponent's cards, which in this kind is friendly is yours, enemy is your opponent's. Then you also have things like unique cards. So those are these ones, which we kind of went over a little bit earlier in the video. So unique cards represent specific characters or objects in the Star Wars universe, and are indicated by the little star before the card's name. You can only have one copy of each unique card in play at a time. If you ever have multiple copies of the same unique card in play under control, you must immediately defeat one of them. So if you have this Boba Fett out and you play another Boba Fett, the same Boba Fett, or play another unique Boba Fett card, that's the same one, you then have to defeat one of them. So bear that in mind. And then decking out. So this is something where this is like a different this is something that in other card games is an alternative way to win. So like as we've seen with other games, you can win by dealing enough damage or defeating something or decking out. Well, in this card game, running out a card in your deck is not like a win condition. So there's no really advantage. Well, it's not a huge advantage to milling out to win the game. Because if you run out of cards in your deck, you continue playing with the cards you already have. But anytime you would draw a card from your empty deck, you instead deal 3 damage to your base for each card you would draw. So for instance, if you would draw 2 cards in your regroup phase, instead you deal 6 damage to your base. So while you don't win by decking out, if you do deck out, you then start doing damage to yourself, and then kind of kill yourself. So milling out is technically a strategy. It might be a bit difficult to do that at the beginning, but then if you do deck your opponent out, they start taking damage anytime when they draw cards. If it's by drawing a card outside of the regroup phase or during the regroup phase, they take 3 damage onto their base for each card they would draw. Now we come down to card abilities. So several types of abilities can be found in the text box on cards. So we've kind of gone over this a little bit before, but we'll go over a bit more to go over the different kinds of abilities. So you have action abilities. So action abilities have a bold text with the word action. So as you can see on Boba Fett, well, each of them, you got icon attack, when defeated, and things like that. And sometimes they have a cost in brackets, followed by a colon with an effect. So as you can see with on attack, you've got they're bolded, colons in there. Maybe if they got a cost, they have it before, as we saw with Cassian, the leader. And then you got a colon, and then basically fulfill them as they say. Like so, on attack is when attacking, when defeated is when the card is defeated. You also have triggered abilities. These have bold text indicating their trigger condition with a word when or on. So with on attack, on is a triggered ability, so it triggers on attack. When defeated, when, so it's when the card is defeated, it's triggered them. And once again, followed by an icon and an effect. They resolve automatically after the triggered condition occurs and are mandatory unless they use the word may. So like with the distant patroller here, you got when defeated, you may give a shield token to a unit, so you don't have to if you don't want to, but you have the option to do so. And there's 3 different ones. You do. I think I probably should have got on a different card for the third one because there are 3 different ones. I've only got the 2 examples. So you've got the different conditions that appear on most cards, and each have specific rules and timing. So you got on attack. This happens after the unit is chosen as an attacker before damage is dealt. You have when defeated. This happens after the card is defeated. This card is in the discard pile when the ability resolves. And you've got when played, and this happens after the card is played. The card is in play when the ability resolves. And then you've got keyword abilities as well. So these appear in a red text. And a good example of that is the one on K2SO. So keyword abilities appear in red text. Each keyword has specific rules associated with it and are described in detail normally on the cards, but some of them don't have it, like here we go, overwhelm, but we'll go over those in a little bit. You have constant abilities as well, which appear on cards that remain in play and have no special styling. They are active as long as the card is in play, and they're regardless of whether the card is ready or exhausted. You also have event abilities, which appear on events. They are one-time abilities that resolve when the effect is played, when the event is played. So that's all really about the card abilities for now. Now we'll go into the deck building, like we said we're going to go into later on in the video. So after learning the basics of the game, the next step you want to take is building your own custom deck, unless you want to use a starter deck. And you can get additional cards to customize your deck from booster packs, and so you can use a starter deck and customize it with cards from the first set. So your leader your deck must include 3 different things. So it must include 1 leader, 1 base, because you have 1 leader basically use things for, and you're your lead commanding your deck, essentially commanding your army, which is your deck. 1 base, which is what you need to be to determine how many hit points you have and how many damage your opponent has to do to you to defeat you. And then you need at least 50 other cards consisting of units, events, and upgrades for your deck. And one special thing to note is that your deck can't include more than 3 copies of any card. So it's a little bit different to how we've got it for Dragon Ball and things like that. So, you got Dragon Ball and Pokemon and One Piece, where you can have 4 copies of any given card. But this is more like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can only have 3 copies of any given card. And that's in the card code, not the name of the card. So your leader and base each provide aspect icons that indicate the colors of your deck. Your leader provides 2 icons and your base provides 1, giving you 3 aspect icons total to use for your deck. Most cards in your deck have 1 or more aspect icons near the cost, and you can include cards of any aspect in your deck. So you can include cards that don't have the same aspect. You ideally want to have cards with the same aspect as your combined leader and base have, but you don't have to. You can have cards that don't have an aspect the same as your leader and base. But when playing a card with icons that are not provided by your leader or base, you must pay an extra 2 resources for each missing icon. And this additional cost is called the aspect penalty, and in general you should try to only put cards in your deck that match the aspect icons provided by your leader and base, but you can if you want to tech ones that aren't included. And to kind of help with that, we've got a little bit of to show like where the aspect icons are. So you can see on the administrator tower here, this your base, it shows that you got this icon here, which is the cunning icon, and your leader, say if your leader was Luke Skywalker, it has the vigilance and heroism one. So if you're using this as your leader and this is your base, you then have access to the cunning, vigilance, and heroism aspect icons, making it so any cards with these aspect icons don't incur additional cost. But say if you're playing cards with the other 3 icons, being if you're using this leader in this space and you're using cards in your deck with the other icons being command, aggression, or villainy, for each one of those different ones you don't have on your leader or base, you have to pay an extra 2 resources to play those cards. And if that's a little bit confusing, well, we'll go over with a nice little aspect guide. So, if you're as an example, if your leader provides I can't remember what vigilance, that's the one, vigilance and heroism, and your base provides the aggression icon, you then have that's your free aspect icons. So a card with a single aspect, being one of those 3, being vigilance, heroism, or aggression, those occur at no additional costs. If you have a card that has both vigilance and heroism, or aggression and heroism on your cards, they have no additional costs. So what you notice is every card has one of the 4 main icons, being vigilance, command, aggression, and cunning. So the blue, green, red, and yellow one, those are the ones every card has. Every card has one of them. But then some cards will have an additional icon being either heroism, being a heroic card, or a villainy one being a villain card. And some cards that aren't partial won't have it. I think there is one card in the upcoming set that doesn't have any aspect icons, but that means basically you just don't get any additional aspect costs for that card. But getting back to the cost for the card, if you have a card with a single, like if with these 3, if with vigilance, heroism, and aggression as your aspects on your leader and base, if you then try to use a card that has, like say if you use a card with just has command, just has cunning, or just has villainy on it, that card along with his printed cost would require you to pay an additional cost of 2 to play it. So that's for those ones. Then we have more as well, so don't forget we have more of this as well, because there's a few different like a little bit maths, there's a few different versions of this. So if you have a card that has, say, both, like with these, keeping the example of having those aspect icons across your leader and base, if you want to play a card that has command and heroism, or cunning and heroism, then the heroism icon is covered by your leader because your leader has the heroism aspect. But because your leader doesn't have either command or cunning, you'd have to pay an additional cost of 2. So while one is covered, the other one isn't covered, so you have to still pay the 2 because that one is missing. Now, if you want to play a card with 2 of the same icons, so if you have a card, with these examples still, if you have a vigilance on your lead or aggression on your base, and you want to play a card that has 2 vigilance aspect icon or 2 aggression icons with this combination, because you have a single vigilance icon but are missing the second, in order to play such a card with no extra cost, you need your leader or base to provide the second icon. So if you wanted to play a card that has 2 vigilance, because your leader only has 1 vigilance aspect icon and your base doesn't have another, you have to pay 2. So if you have things that have 2 of the same icon, you need to have those two of the same icon on your lead. So if you want to play 2 vigilance, you need to have 2 vision icon across your lead and your base. Now, if you wanted to play a card that had command and villainy or cunning and villainy, you have to pay an extra 4 costs because you're missing both the command or cunning icon plus the villainy one. So you have to pay 2 for each. So 2 for command, 2 for villainy, meaning you have to pay an extra 4 costs to play a card that isn't covered by any aspect on your lead. So a good rule of thumb for your deck as well, as we'll get into that as well, is to include about 30 to 40 units with a mix of ground and space units and about 10 to 20 events and upgrades. And you should make sure to include cards with a variety of costs, including plenty of 2 to 3 cost cards to play in the early game, so you actually have things to play, and then later on as you get in the game, some bigger ones as well. So that is technically it for it. There are different. We'll also go over the keywords as well, because I did say we'll cover the keywords. I just forgot to do a slide for it. So you got different keywords in. You got ambush. So ambush is a keyword skill where after you play the unit, you can ready it and attack an enemy unit. But this unit doesn't ready if there is no enemies to attack it. So if you play an ambush unit in your ground area and there's no other ground area units, it won't restand an attack. But if you play it in the arena and there's another unit in that arena that your opponent controls, you can basically ready it and attack straight away into that unit. You also have another keyword, which is grit, and this unit basically grit means that the card that has it, a card that has grit, gets 1 extra power for each damage on it. So if your card has grit and it's got 2 damage on it, it gains 2 power for each. So it gains extra power for every damage counter on it. You also have overwhelm. This last one we saw on K2SO. So overwhelm is when this unit deals damage to an enemy unit while attacking. Any excess damage that you did to the unit will be passed over the opponent's base. So for example, if a unit with 5 power and overwhelm attacks a unit with 3 hit points, then the excess damage of 2 will be dealt to the unit's base. So if you attack a 3 HP unit with 5 power and overwhelm, you then deal the additional excess 2 damage to your opponent's base. Then we've kind of seen raid. So raid is when the unit is attacking, it gets extra power equal to the raid value. So as we saw on the spaceship earlier, we had raid 1. So when it attacks, it gets an additional 1 power when attacking. Then you have restore, like we've seen before. When this unit attacks, heal damage from your base equal to the restore value. So as you saw before, restore 1. When it attacks, it restores 1 damage from your base. You have saboteur. So as we've seen that already as well, which is when this unit attacks, you ignore the sentinel keyword on the enemy unit and defeat all shields on the card you're attacking, so the defender, before dealing damage. So you don't have to worry about sentinel forcing you to attack a card, and you defeat any shield tokens on the card you're attacking before you deal with any damage. Then we got sentinel. So that's like this is kind of like the deadly defender kind of thing, where enemy units in the same area, ground or space, depending which arena it's in, as the unit with sentinel can't attack your non-sentinel units in the arena or your base. If you have multiple units with sentinel in the same arena, your opponent may choose which of those ones to attack, and you place units with sentinel slightly ahead of the other units in the arena to show that the remainder of the cards can be attacked. So you kind of separate them to show that they can only attack into these sentinel cards unless they have saboteur. So it's kind of protecting. Those cards are pretty useful for protecting your other units or base from attacks. And then the last one I think we've got is shielded. So when you play a unit with the keyword shielded, you give a shield token to it, and if any amount of damage will be dealt to the unit with a shield token on it, you prevent that damage from being dealt, and then defeat the shield token to fill 1 shield token on that unit. So if you have multiple shield tokens, when that unit's dealt damage, you prevent the damage and take off 1 shield token, not all of them, which is pretty cool. And that is how to play the Star Wars Unlimited trading card game. So hopefully that makes sense. If you got any comments about anything, feel free to comment down below, and I'll help as best I can by answering the question. And give a go at playing. It's a really fun game. I've looked to really enjoy it. I've seen some gameplay that's really cool. And we'll be having webcam locals every Monday for the game as well. We'll do it with proxies until the game comes out, being printed proxies over webcam. And I look forward to playing it and have some fun, because it's a nice franchise, and it looks like a really fun game mechanically and franchise-wise. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and check out at some point when we have gameplay on the channel to see some games and see some decks be played. So once again, thank you for watching, and see you next one. Bye for now.